every class, the pastor who led the class would say, this is for pastors and future pastors' wives or current pastors' wives to know and understand this, but these messages are for pastors exclusively. So when it was talking about preaching the gospel and bringing these messages, there was one point where I raised my hand and I was like, what does this mean for me as a female reading the Bible? Why am I exempt from this? And where does it say that I'm... it was one of the first times like really stepping out to say like, something doesn't seem right. But like my intuition was just dying. I was just like, every class I'd be like, oh my gosh. And this was the class I had right before this one or right after. I kid you not, was a Proverbs 31 class where you literally learned to be a Proverbs 31. What was like cooking classes, etiquette, how to take care of a husband.
Like the whole class was just on
the
Proverbs 31.
Class, it was only women could be in it. We literally had to have demonstration days where we'd like meet at another pastor's wife's house and we'd all be in charge of like chopping vegetables, preparing dinner, because this is what we'd have to do as a pastor's wife.
This is a horror
as a
film.
Godly wife.
This is like a great story for a horror film.
Just to reiterate, this is Calvary Chapel, right? So this is, can you say the school one more time?
This is Calvary Chapel, Marietta, Bible College, 2007.
That's such a...
Which we know they're just bigger now.
100%. And they're probably still doing this exact thing. It's not just one school. It's wild to think of how much of an impact Chuck Smith had and the cult he actually created.
Yes.
Because he just made it to Hollywood, too.
It's so beyond Christianity. Christianity is just the religion, but then there's this culture, this cult of Calvary Chapel that we're all from.
Yes.
I talk to other people that aren't part of Calvary Chapel and they'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry you went through that. And they still are Christians and they believe it all. And I'm like, how could you? And it blows my mind. But it's Calvary Chapel.
It's very specific.
Yes. I wrote a paper actually, funny enough, that was called The Cult of Calvary Chapel. And it was this like multiple page paper all about the history of its origins and like red flags that went up real early. That one is a feather rustler for sure. I don't know if it'll ever make it anywhere else, but it's, I wrote it and I spent a lot of time.
How healing.
Yeah, it really was, honestly, to go that deep and to go back and be like,
just writing about this shit at all, right?
Oh, totally.
Like,
totally.
It's so powerful.
It really has been. So in that, like, I remember the pastor of that class, back to that pastoral epistles class, and he said, this isn't for you. Like, it's just not for you. It's for pastors. And it's important for pastors' wives to know so that they know the way in which God is instructing their husbands or their pastors.
Place.
Yeah. And I was like, but I just can't believe like an entire section of the Bible would just be like, I would be exempt from learning from it. That doesn't make sense to me. And he was like, well, it doesn't have to make sense to you. That's just what it is. And I remember sitting there just being like, okay. And he's like, so if you're a pastor's wife, it'll be important. I was like, but I don't want, and this was what like literally like Pearl clasping, like girls going, like, I was like, but I don't want to be a pastor's wife. So what does it mean for me? And that's when he responded that like, it doesn't have to make sense to you. This is just how it is.
So he's basically saying, fuck your critical thinking.
Yes.
Get in line.
Yes.
And shut up.
Yes. And all the girls are looking at me like,
yeah. And they're making me feel, they're like crazy.
Heads, like, what did she just say out loud? And I just sat there and was like, okay. So at the time I had a job at Starbucks down the street. I was doing 22 units worth of school and I was working 14 to 18 hours at Starbucks. There were two girls. These girls literally saved my life and changed the trajectory of my entire life. I've never been able to find them, to reconnect with them like since. And one day I hope that I can. I got to be such good friends with them, working with them, and they very lovingly and gently every shift would just kind of give me some pushback. They'd be like, yeah, we went there once and we left. And I remember at first being like, oh,
wait, they went to the college as well? And they deconstructed.
And they left. But they just like flat out left. And they went like, they were like, we're done. I guess we're on the highway to hell, so we might as well have a great time. Like they didn't even, at least at that time, they were not interested in deconstructing anything.
Totally.
They were just like, bye. Like once they learned.
Those first 2 years, it's all about testing the waters.
And they were just out. And but they were so loving and gentle. And they would see me and they go, Julie, like we care about you so much. And you're such a wonderful person. Like and like it took probably a month and a half of us working together and of them like kind of just gently pushing back things. Like, have you ever asked about this? Or like, doesn't this not make sense? Yeah. And finally one day I was on shift with both of them. And they said, they're like, Julie, we really need you to know that you're in a cult. And I remember they said it. Powerful. And they were the very first people to ever use that word. And I remember my first instinct, like just natural like response was to be like, oh my God, no way. I'm like, I'm not in a cult. 100%. Like who wouldn't? And as I was like going to respond that way, this little voice inside my intuition was like, they're right.
That same voice.
The same voice. And they were like, right. And you know it. Yeah. And I remember being like,